Hi there, everybody. It is Friday, November 6th, and I just wanted to talk a little bit to you about last week's papers and your upcoming rough draft for next week, as well as peer reviews and other things that I have submitted onto Blackboard. I am in the process of reading your paper still. Remember, in my last email, I asked you to give me a couple of weeks, and I will have them done by uh, likely Monday and hopefully sooner than that. So I've been working on them, and some of you have a grade. If you have a grade, please go back through your paper and find out why you received that grade. Some of you, I specifically gave you instructions in the comments on emailing me and talking to me. So you really do need to read through the comments as to why you received that grade. Now, in terms of the next paper coming up, I hope you've read the paper assignment. You are writing an explication of a poem, and it will be one of the poems that is on our calendar. So I have listed out the poems. The only poem that you cannot choose to write about to explicate is My Papa's Waltz, because I did a very long video explication of that one a couple of weeks ago. My notes on all of the others are shorter, so that will give you more information about the poem from your own head that you can put into your explication. You can use some of my notes and information as you explicate, but I did give lectures and notes with a little less information and a few more questions to ask on the other poems. Let me go through the other poems that you were allowed to choose to explicate. Remember, you're only doing one. You're not writing a comparison paper. So you're picking one of the following poems to explicate. Those Winter Sundays, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, Harlem, We Wear the Mask, Still I Rise. And then there are two poems with notes that I'm going to post early next week called Quinceañera and Mexicans Begin Jogging. Quinceañera is by Judith Ortiz Kofer. Mexicans Begin Jogging is by Gary Soto, if you have to look for those online. So, an explication, I have given you directions and a definition of what it means and how it will be written. It's a little different kind of paper from an analysis. You are still analyzing, but you're doing it on a much more specific level. And because you're explicating a poem, you're doing it line by line or stanza by stanza. And so, even if you choose to do one of the shortest poems like Harlem, in creating an explication, you'll have lots of information because you're working so specifically with words and sentences and lines. You will have large ideas that you talk about, of course, but that's the purpose of an explication, is to unfold or to very specifically explain the pieces of a poem from beginning to end. So, if you read my assignment, you'll notice that the introduction paragraph gives a brief overview of the poem and ends with a thesis sentence. And then you move chronologically through the poem, whether you choose to go line by line or stanza by stanza. And throughout that explication, you will be looking at literary devices such as imagery, personification, metaphor, simile, alliteration, assonance, consonants, symbols, all of the things that I talked about in my very beginning PowerPoint on reading and understanding poetry. As much as you can. Of course, you're going to wind up leaving some things out because the paper does not go on for 10 pages. The paper is 1,000 words. You are able to put the entire poem at the beginning of your paper. So copy and paste the poem. Now, those of you who choose Still I Rise, which is the longest poem in the list, you're welcome to copy that. That is part of your 1,000 words. But I think you might have to go over 1,000 words once you copy that, just because you may miss some important aspects of the poem. So think about that um, when you choose your poem. You're certainly allowed to choose any of the poems that I just mentioned. And you can go ahead and copy and paste the poem at the beginning of your paper, right under the title. The reason I'm telling you this is because I just posted a few minutes ago a sample student explication paper from a few years ago. So it was an A quality explication paper, similar to the research paper I posted. This one does exactly what it's supposed to. It starts with a brief introduction discussing the poem, gives a thesis at the end, and then moves line by line through the poem. It is a poem we did not read and you probably do not know, called Morning Song by Joy Harjo. And that poem, the student actually cut and paste or copied and pasted it into the paper itself. And so I urge you to read the poem and then read the explication and see how the student explicates and unfolds the meaning of the poem using literary devices. So that rough draft is due on Wednesday. Read ahead the two poems if you would like to choose Quinceañera or Mexicans Begin Jogging. I have had students work with those poems in the past with great success, and they're often student favorite poems. So go ahead and move forward and read those, even though they're not due until next week. One final thing about your rough draft. I only have time with this set of rough drafts to read 500 words. You're welcome to write more than 500 words. You're welcome to write the whole rough draft, but I will have to stop at 500 words in reading it just because of time constraints. There is one caveat, though, for you to have me read and comment on the whole draft, and that is if you bring your draft to my office hours. And by that I mean just come to my office hours, which are every Monday and Wednesday from 4 to 6 p.m. It's been that way all semester. And I will read the rest of your paper with you. It's something I would do with my students if we were meeting face to face. I'd read part of the rough draft online and then either do conferences, individual conferences during class time, or have office hours or something of that sort. So this is very similar. You would come and I would read it and discuss it with you. And then you could take notes or just listen to what I'm telling you about the other parts of your paper that you've written. So essentially, the minimum and maximum word count for your rough draft is 500 words on Wednesday of this coming week, the 11th. Although you can write more, I just won't read more. Peer reviews, we are actually going to do peer reviews this time around. It's a little more stable on who's actually in the course at this point. Not completely, but we will try to do peer reviews on this one. They'll be due on the 15th. So one more date that you should be aware of is November 19th, because that is the day to drop the class. And if you are in a bad position, if you look at your weighted total and see that there's no way that you could bring that up to a passing grade, you have to decide if you're going to drop the class or not. I'm not dropping anyone this semester. We're not doing that with online courses. But past that drop date, you will get an F. You will earn the grade that you earn if you haven't done any of the work. So just throwing that out there for you in case that's an option and a possibility. Okay, I think that's all for now. I've posted notes on all of the poems. You have the paper assignment. You now have a sample explication paper. And so I would go ahead and get started so that I can look forward to reading your rough drafts starting Wednesday. I will have finished your research papers in the next 3 or 4 days at the most. Okay, bye-bye.